Good afternoon, everyone. So before we dive into the latest and greatest and really talk trends with one another, I want to invite you both to share a little bit about who you are, your companies, and then following your introductions, I'll give a little intro about myself and about Salesforce. So, Charisse, I'd love to start with you. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do at KPMG as well as KPMG's AI journey?
Sure. So I'm Charisse Dean. I'm a managing director in the advisory practice of KPMG. I think most people think of KPMG as an audit or tax firm, but I actually sit in the advisory practice. There are three of them. The advisory practice is what you could consider our transformation and strategy practice. And so that gives us the ability to serve our clients in very innovative, I would think, atypical to an audit and consult, or it is a consulting firm, but audit and tax firm, which is why I'm here. I have over 20, now almost 25 years in technology operations and strategy, and about 15 years actually in the, what do we call it now? Social sustainability. But quite frankly, it's in DEI and social impact. And so I have the privilege of working for a firm where I get to do both of those things. I lead U.S. social sustainability for the entire U.S. I also help and lead our higher education practice in health and government with the intersection at academic medical centers. So to make that real simple, I take my 20 plus years of technology experience, transformation, and strategy, and I help the leading companies and institutions across the US and globally think about how they want to transform their academic medical centers, as well as think about how they ensure that they're supporting their people, their cultures, and being inclusive while doing so, all using technology.
Okay, so you're not busy at all.
No, I'm bored. Nothing to do.
I love that. I love that. And I especially think that it is unique to both have expertise with regard to technology as well as keeping humans at the center of that conversation. So that's really exciting. Jake, tell me a little bit about yourself and tell me about Glean.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So just a little bit of background. So I think for this group, a lot of us are startup founders or working in startups themselves. I've done the startup thing. I've also been in very successful exits of startups, and I've also been in startups that, like most, right, don't get off the ground or don't actually make it. So I can empathize with each of you for being here and what you're going through if you are in a startup right now and in the grind that it is. What I'm doing right now at Glean is we're starting to exit that startup phase. We're starting to get into that next wave of our growth. And so that's kind of where I specialize in these days. So I've been at companies, I was at Acquia about 10 years ago where we did web content management for open source Drupal and helping bring that to large enterprises. And then I went to Confluent where we did the same thing with Apache Kafka, brought that to the enterprise, helped grow that out, and now I'm at Glean. And so at Confluent was where Glean actually started for me. I found an opportunity where I needed help. I needed to find information. I needed to be able to interact with that information, but I couldn't find it anywhere. It was a very complicated product. And I went to my team and I said, hey, I'm having a really tough time where like my team and I don't understand how to explain these things to our customers that we're building and the innovative stuff that we're working on. And for me, that was when I was introduced to Glean before it was even called Glean, when it was just a startup being incubated. And I was such a fan, I decided, 5 years later that I wanted to come and work here. So I run our strategic sales team, so think working with companies like Comcast and Vanguard and those alike. And I really appreciate you all letting me join.
Awesome, awesome. So you have the wonderful perspective of seeing when it works, navigating when it doesn't, and also identifying those opportunities for growth. So
yes.
I think we have some great perspectives, and I'll just give a little bit about me. So unlike these two rock stars that I'll be interviewing, I'm actually not a technologist. I, by trade, am a grant maker, so I provide capital to nonprofit organizations. So I guess in some ways, I'm more like a VC investor, just on the nonprofit side of things, supporting organizations across the world as they increase access to digital skills as well as early career experiences for young people. Now, I do that on behalf of a very technical organization by the name of Salesforce. Salesforce is a customer management platform that has been around for the past 25 years and works across multiple industries. So retail and healthcare and nonprofits and education and life sciences, pretty much if you can think of it, we probably service a customer or a company within that field or sector. And beginning in about fall of 2024, we released a set of public-facing AI-powered solutions across all of the companies within the Salesforce umbrella. So there's Salesforce, which is the actual kind of relationship management platform. There's Slack, there's MuleSoft, which is a data warehouse. There's Tableau, which is data visualization, and a couple of other companies where you'll see AI powering and accelerating capacity within those tech spaces. So naturally speaking, we've seen a lot. We are still learning. So I want to also issue that little bit of guidance before we begin, right? Like, we are all in the space, but there are no definitive answers in the space because this is a technology that is advancing at speeds that we've never experienced before. So what we'll talk about today is what we're observing real time. I will ask you all later on to look into your crystal balls, so get ready. But let's start things off with what I like to call a softball question. So the three of our companies really provide support and act as a trusted advisor to the companies that they engage with. And so not only are you able to see when things are innovative and maybe applied in a new way, you're also able to zoom out and really understand, like, okay, what are the standardized indicators of success? Where are we beginning to see pockets of applicability that are really important for us to maintain and scale? So Jake, I'm gonna start with you. Where are you seeing, or what's one trend you're seeing in AI that you think startups should definitely pay attention to and not ignore?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So I think the number one thing is this whole concept of agentic workflows. How do I have the technology? How do I have AI step in and automate what we're trying to do, right? So think of it as like taking a task, having the AI set up a framework so that it's sending you reports, it's running those reports, it's giving it back to you. It's on everyone's mind, every CIO that we meet with and talk to. It's how do we set this up in a way where we can trust it, but also we don't want to take the human out of the loop either, right? We want the people to stay in their roles, but we want them to focus on what's going to be innovative, more productive, and we want to get rid of the mundane. And that's what everyone's asking, how do we do this? How do we make our people better?
I was going to say, it sounds like you could work at Salesforce. I know you're at Glean, but insofar as keeping humans in the loop and really talking about how to scale human capacity and not wholesale replace it. I think a lot of the fear when AI first reached its kind of peak of popularity, I'd say around 2022, although we've had predictive for many moons now, folks were scared that it was kind of like Skynet from the Terminator, right? Like this wholesale replacement of humans and that we weren't going to have a place in the place of work anymore. But really and truly, to your point, it is scaling capacity of organizations to do more and or to focus on the parts of work that actually can't be offloaded or built into a large language model. So with that in mind, Charisse, I'd love to know what's a trend that you're seeing that you think startups should pay attention to?
I think the entire concept, and you actually kind of hit on it, which is the human in the loop. I think about the securitization of it all. I think having all companies, no matter of what scale and size you are at, should be thinking about governance when it comes to AI. And how are they going to govern not only their data, but also the people who are helping progress the AI models, develop them, design them, test them, thinking about the governance of it all. We have a trusted AI framework that we have built, and at its core, it's about fairness, but it's also about transparency, explainability, and I would say the foundation is security. Because if you can't trust it, and what we know to be true is the biggest concern with AI, even at the speed that it's moving, is the trust factor. Right? It's not only the trust from those of us who work in companies that actually understand and build it, but it's actually the public trust and public interest, right? And so I would tell you that it's critical that you have a very strong governance model in place, but then associated to that is the security. And what we're seeing is what they're calling the AI red teams, or red teaming, which means similar to what they do in cybersecurity when they develop red teams whose entire intention is to try to hack. You need to have and formulate teams similar to that to basically securitize your AI models and your data and your environment. And so what I'd say what's really important, no matter your size, and you need to have that same concept of being able to test and hack yourselves or create red teams so that you can ensure that you have security, because that is going to be, and that is the most critical component of having the models. You can have all I would say the most beautiful, the most elegant, and the most productive platforms, but if people can't trust it, your customer or your consumer, then it is for naught.
I couldn't agree with you more. At Salesforce, trust is actually our number one value, because to your point, in order for technology to perform at scale, it's actually super critical that there is comfort in engaging with the technology, and that comfort can only be accomplished by way of trust. And Jake, I actually would love to start with you for our next question, because Charisse, you teed me up so wonderfully. Again, in our role as trusted advisors, we're often working with companies who are actually at the beginning of their AI journey. So agnostic of the lovely large logos or their place on the Fortune list. What you'd be surprised to know is that many companies are still actually in the beginning of their AI journey. And I think that actually offers some really valuable insights for this audience. So Jake, with regard to early stage companies, how might they think about that data governance and responsible use guidelines, as well as developing an ethical application of AI within their organizations?
Yeah, no, that's great. I actually, the way that I look at this, right, or the way we look at it at Glean is we say, okay, you have your permissions that you've set up, you have your governance that you've established. Let us tie into that. Let us make it easy for you, because that needs to be table stakes. We're not going to be able to scale this out. We're not going to have trust, right, in this if it's not already tied into what we should already have access to. And so Glean's product does the surfacing of information. It allows the augmentation of that information, and also the generation of new content, new material, right, as well, off of what's already been created. The only way that you can roll that out is if you have the root of governance in place. And so the founder of Glean, his name's Arvind Jain. He started at Akamai, which was a CDN company, does content delivery. From there, he went to Google and built out what actually is Google Search. He was one of the first 200 people. And after that, he went to Rubrik, which has since IPO'd and is a data security company. And while he was at Rubrik, he said, hey, if I combine these three things, I can actually tie into existing permissions. I can provide employees with content accessibility. And then when you put AI on top of that in 22, 23, it was like, oh, okay, we might be onto something here, because now we can actually help the employees securely access AI. And when you were just talking, actually, I had a question, if that's okay.
Of course.
Do you find that like employees at like a KPMG, that there's a subset of employees that are almost afraid to say that they're using AI?
So I would tell you probably 6 months ago, the answer would be yes. But now, and it's actually, you teed me up, because I will tell you that we have made it our strategy and our mission that everyone in the firm should be unafraid, but most importantly, embrace it in ways that we meet them where they are. So no matter where you are on your journey from an AI standpoint, we understand that it is imperative, it is an imperative that everyone in our firm understands what it is, how to use it, and how to help themselves and our clients, right? Because at the end of the day, we're a professional services firm, and so our clients are our product, right? Our people are our product, but they're also our clients are. And so what we've done is we have done everything from, we have, I would say the highest level of AI tools to the most rudimentary AI training, so that anyone in the entire life cycle of their learning journey, we have something for them so we can meet them. But before, I would tell you, we had, you don't want to kind of stereotype across generations, but I will tell you that we did some surveys, and from it was, those in the 50 plus, they really weren't trying to touch it at all. The 40 plus, it was they would, I think we had a 20% adoption rate. 50 plus, it was 4%, and I'm going to be killed for this. But then I would tell you the 20 to maybe early 30s, we had about a 23 to 30% adoption rate. That was 6 months ago. Those numbers now have jumped between 10 to 20% in each of the respective, I would call it, generations. So to your point, yes, there was a lack of trust and fear because of not understanding that the human in the loop function could not go away, right? And so what they thought was, if I actually use this, I will be replacing myself with the AI, not understanding that actually, no, you are accelerating your ability to do your work. You are removing the administrative kind of low complex tasks so that you can actually do your work faster, better, and serve your clients. And once we're starting to get people and meeting them, for me, I'll tell you, I'm a super user, right? I use it. Every device I have has some kind of chat. I call her Chatty. That's my girl. And we interact every single day. But I'm always outside selling, right? I'm trying to get proposals. So from a startup component, that's what you do. You're trying to sell. And so if you can think about how you can integrate and embrace AI in a way to sell faster with less people, right, with more accuracy, then you will be able to get out and pitch your product or sell your service faster. And that's what it does for us. I can generate a proposal in minutes now that used to take me 2 weeks. And I can't tell you how many people. So if I start equating the cost benefit of it, we're saving thousands and thousands of dollars in hours, because I've now used something that now I can put in front of my clients much faster. And so once we got old heads aligned to the fact that, no, I'm going to help you do your job faster, better, so you can actually make more money, because at the end of the day, that's what everyone's trying to do, while trying to solve, the problems that our clients have, everyone felt like they were winning. And so I would say now in the last 6 months, we have seen, like I said, the adoption rate 10 to 20% in each, and probably more in obviously that 18 to 30, I'm sorry, not 20 to 30, but yeah.
That's super helpful. And I think that you each elevated some really important realities. One, as much as it's about, quite frankly, having an answer to the ubiquitous AI question, which it seems like everyone has a base level expectation of, it's also about creating awareness and clarity that, to your point around adoption, it's not wholesale replacement in the way that we migrated from using floppy disks to using CD-ROMs to using USB to using the cloud. It is a similar evolution of how we do our work, But what did not happen in that technological evolution that I just described was that humans were no longer functionally guiding what that information held, how that information was leveraged, and what solutions have been derived from the provision of that information. And then with regard to making learning available, so similar to you, me and Perplexity AI go together real bad. So in addition to using ChatGPT, and Salesforce actually has a native instance of ChatGPT known as Einstein, I don't Google anymore. I Perplexity, because Perplexity provides summaries of your information with footnotes so you can trust the responses that you're receiving in real time. It is installed on all of my devices, and I strongly encourage anyone who is curious to get into just playing around with AI to take advantage of Perplexity. And at Salesforce, we actually have quarterly learning days, to your point, where we step away from our day-to-day tasks and we spend the entire day either working together in person or working asynchronously to explore various training pathways so that we can see how AI is applicable to our function. So I told you guys that I'm kind of the outlier on this panel because Charisse and I probably navigate a similar world where we support nonprofit organizations with philanthropic capital.
Yeah.
What people don't realize is that part of why this conversation is so smooth flowing today is because ChatGPT helped me make sure that these questions flowed in alignment, quite frankly. Or if you see a wonderful grant announcement or a proposal that sounds really innovative, chances are there's been a back and forth exchange between myself, a communications professional, and ChatGPT, the communications expert, to make sure that there was clarity of message, that we were able to drive a point home, and that we were consistent with our brand voice. So I say all that to say, you do not have to be a UI UX designer. You do not have to be a technologist or a coder to realize value, because I probably couldn't be further away from being any of those things. But one of the things that I think that I'd love to dig into next, and this is a question for you both, but I'll start with Jake, is you actually have a unique perspective because, like we said at the outset, you've seen when being in startup phase goes well, you've seen when it goes not so great, and you have leveraged that experience, I think, to guide your career. What are some common missteps or misperceptions that you see startups making when it comes to AI? And Charisse, I'd like to ask you the same question.
Yeah, thank you. I would say the number one thing that I see is that it's not understanding your fit, your product market fit. And also, like, when you take another double click on that, it's, does my positioning and messaging align, right? And those two are different things. I think oftentimes we blend those together. But when the positioning doesn't align with the messaging, what you end up with is a divergent sales and marketing message. And it's so often you get lost, right? Now you're chasing something that is not readily within your grasp. And when in the companies where it hasn't been as successful, I look back on those and I'm like, well, we had great messaging, we had great position, but we actually didn't have good product market fit. We were viewed as a feature of a larger product. Or more recently, I was in a company where the product was great, but the positioning and messaging was way off. And so I think when you look at those three things, if you can find a company or in your company, you have all three, and all three of those are aligned. And then when you intentionally hire people who are aligned with those three things and understand those three pillars of your company, you can start to build core DNA around it. When you don't have that, what you end up with is a lack of good culture in the company. You have people that aren't as motivated. No one's mission driven, and you kind of just stay where you are or you fizzle out. And it's really one of those two things. I also think that in the companies that I've worked at that have done really well, it's getting the people bought in. And so I think you each have probably experienced this, but like getting bought in is saying something, actually having talking to your employees and understanding what is important to them, having initiatives where you can get them out in the field. For me, maybe it's volunteering, right? Doing something with, at-risk youth, going and spending time with them. Like, get the employees out there, do that. It doesn't have to be all work. Find ways to have commonality towards mission that isn't just your mission, right, in the company. It builds culture, builds inclusivity, and people really get on board with it. And I've seen that in the companies that we're successful in. We take a day, we pause. We either work on something different, or we go out in the field and we do something for the community. And it usually goes a very long way.
So I'm going to give you some perspective of, I have worked actually for a startup, but in a multi-billion-dollar company. So before KPMG, not in consulting, I was in telecom. And I was part of AT&T's, at that point, no one knew what we were. We were like, I don't know, what is it, B63? What is it, B36 from?
B613.
B613. Like, no one knew no one knew we existed. We were this cell inside of AT&T, and we were building another company. And the way we were successful, not only did we have anonymity, but we were successful because everyone understood the one goal that we had, right? And I will tell you that we grew in record time, meaning we went from a zygote to a fully fledged company in 6 months. And then we were able to then launch ourselves in 12 months, so much so and so quickly that AT&T made the decision to acquire Cricket Wireless because the team understood that goal so intentionally, I would say almost so cellularly, that we were extremely successful beyond their dreams. So they made the decision for us to M&A Cricket. So while we were running this brand new company, we were then going out and purchasing another company. The reason we could do that was because everyone, you might say, drank the Kool-Aid, but we understood the one goal that we all needed to rally around. And we would almost, I would dream that goal, but we had one goal, and that goal was that we were going to be the best company in the US, and that was it. The best company, and we were going to do it simply. It was how we're going to be the simple and the best company. So everything we did was around simplicity and excellence. And so every KPI we had, every program we built, every company, every vendor, it was, can they measure and can we confirm that they are both simple in their process and their interaction and engagement with us, and they will ensure that we can strive and achieve our excellence. And what I tell you with startups is they make it, and I've seen this, the second we started making it too complex, and we started over-rotating, over-analyzing, or making analysis paralysis, we actually started losing our way. So I would tell startups, and we have a venture arm of KPMG, all we do is work with startups. So it's not what I've not only seen and lived, it's also what I know we do. The companies that we end up either minority investing in or that we partner with are the companies that can articulate how they are both simple and excellent, that they have a core understanding, no matter who you talk to in their firm, about what they're trying to achieve, how they're going to do it, and why it adds value, so they understand their value proposition intrinsically. And those companies, no matter what question you throw at them, they might not have the answer, but they are able to articulate that. And it makes it so much easier because you can then identify where they can plug in. And if they can't do so immediately, we have a bench of venture companies or startups that we're just waiting for the right either client or opportunity to pull them in. So that would be what I would recommend and what I see successfully from a startup standpoint and just overarchingly from a business standpoint.
That's super insightful, and I think a lot of what you shared makes a ton of sense when you don't have the benefit of having a ton of internal capacity and you are in the phase, what I like to call, of focusing on your focus and not being content with what you are, but also being even more comfortable in what you are not, because that's how you stay away from that mission drift. So before we hop into Q&A, we have about 3 minutes left together. And this is where we're all like, I'm going to become Miss Cleo for like 5 seconds, right? And I'm going to peer into a crystal ball, and I'll ask you all to consider the same. At Salesforce, we really consider agentic AI and digital labor to be the future of technology. When we're talking about increasing productivity without having a proportionate increase in expenses, we're seeing from students who have questions in the middle of the night and are engaging with agentic AI to get answers to those questions so they can submit those college applications on time. It's organizations being able to leverage a first look at resumes when they are hiring to solve talent challenges, especially in the shifting landscape where the employment pool is becoming larger than ever. And it's also how we enable customer support teams to, quite frankly, make sure that the easy to solve problems are easily solvable, but where there is complexity, we are taking full advantage of our colleagues and our humans in the loop. So, 1 minute each. I'll start with you, Jake. If you had your crystal ball looking ahead 12 to 18 months, which is like looking ahead 5 years in the world of AI, what shift do you think will be critical related to AI for startups to prep for now?
Yeah, well, I think and just what I'm hearing from the market is that we're all getting to the point of orchestration. And so right now we're just like dipping our toes into the augmentation side, and then that's good, and that's helping people get more out of what they have access to. Now, what do I do next, right? How do I actually automate this? And that's the orchestration side and setting those up. I think that's now becoming the reality and the expectation. I think that's 6 months from now, that's where we're at, and it's table stakes inside of any company. When I think about the commercial side of AI, it's really going to be about memory, right? So how do I make it so that I don't have to always tell it that I'm a sales leader, I work for Glean, I work with these types of accounts, and this is what my business looks like. And here's the type of tone that I usually write in. I want you to improve my tonality and professionalism of my note, right? I think that's what we're getting to, is that in-memory aspect is going to be key.
Awesome. Charisse?
I'm going to go pessimistic, which I typically never do, which is you are going to have to understand, I always flip it, the challenges that agentic AI are going to pose, right? When you have multiple platforms that can process very complex things simultaneously, then there's the trust factor is going to go down because you're going to need less humans, right? So we already are facing an issue with more people or the public trusting it. And so with these agents coming into play, we already know that there's going to be lack of need in certain areas and certain fields for people, right? So the human in the loop factor becomes even both more critical, but also more challenged. So I would tell you that you need to think about all the challenges that agentic AI is going to pose, and then start putting in the right governance and principles and guiding principles so that you can offset it, right? Not that it's a bad thing, because we do need to progress and process more quickly, but the platforms of this newfound or that faster way to process is going to require that the humans, it's going to require the governance, it's going to require the security, all increase. And so you need to put that in place and think about your strategy to do that, and partner in your ecosystems to do it well.
So proactive guardrail building as opposed to reactive.
Correct.
Makes a lot of sense. So I know you all have submitted some questions to us in advance, so I'm going to hold my phone up now, but it is mostly to make sure that I get your question correct. So this is a question for you both, so whomever feels most called to answer. The question says, typically, when most people refer to AI, they are really talking about generative AI. Can you provide input regarding what is most prevalent in terms of artificial intelligence supporting strategic growth? Also, because this is a twofer, what are your thoughts on the future of AGI, or artificial general intelligence?
Might be you. That's a you one,
Okay.
Jake.
We'll start backwards. So on the AGI side, I think it's exciting. I mean, for me personally, I also use commercial AI. I don't use Perplexity. I use Anthropic, and I get a lot out of it. I have like weird relationship with Claude is what they call it. And it's like, look at Claude as like my like lifeline, helps me improve so much in what I do. But when I think about AGI, I think of it as a companion. I think of it as like an assistant. I think of it as something that I'm going to be able to learn how to do something new. So I think for the curious mind, it's going to be this amazing accelerant where if you struggle maybe to focus on things, or if you're easily distracted, all of a sudden you're going to have something that's going to be able to level the playing field for you. And it's going to be able to help you learn the way you like to learn. For me, even with AI the way it is today, that has been exceptionally helpful and valuable. Now that it roots into things like YouTube and whatnot, what it does is it brings me to the source of that information. And because of that, I'm able to then maybe go watch a video to learn how. You can ask my wife, I am terrible with home projects, like terrible. Don't know, hammer from an Allen wrench. But by asking these questions, I've realized what it's done is it's taken down my insecurity of, I'm not good at this, I don't know how to do this. And now I feel enabled. And now I'll go and fix things or do things on my own because I feel empowered, because I have the trust and knowledge of something. So when I think of AGI, I think it's going to break down barriers that we've built up internally, whether that's through anxiety, through a negative voice, or whatever it might be that we have internally. And we're going to start to chip away at that. And I think there's going to be a real benefit to that in society as well. That's not very well talked about. And then on the strategic growth side was the first part. When I look at that, I think of it as, that's part of our mission at Glean, is we want employees to feel like they can do more at work and they can focus on what matters to them and their role and make them more efficient. And also, like, from an engineering capacity, it's like, how do we reduce the noise, right? Allow them to have their hands on their keyboard, to have that flow state of creating, producing, and not having their peer that just started 2 weeks ago pinging them on Slack or Teams or whatever it might be, saying, how do I do this? I can't find this. What is this? How did you create that? I want to know how to. Well, you know what we say at Glean? We say, just glean it. Go and glean it. Go find it. When I hire new sellers and they come to me with questions, I'll spend 2 days with them. 2 days. When I was at companies without Glean, you spend like 6 months. 2 days I say, okay, and then at the end of that I say, anytime you have a question, I want you to glean it. If you don't find what you're looking for, try asking it a different way. Don't come to me until you absolutely have to. And I know that sounds very like out of touch and inhumane, but it makes their onboarding experience so much better. And we had a person here today who started 2 months ago, and she's already working with clients, she's already customer facing, she's running campaigns and running deals. And I have full faith, trust, and confidence in her knowing what we do and how we do it because she has access to Glean.
That's awesome. So I'm going to ask you, do you want to answer this question or do you want me to give you last say?
I don't know. I'm scared.
The remaining 2 questions that I can choose from are a little softer.
Okay. I need the soft question. It's been a rough couple days.
Okay, I can respect that. Yes, we were talking about that before we got started. So, how does the increased requirements around governance when it comes down to AI adoption impact startups who are trying to break into that market?
Ooh, that was soft? Okay.
Softer.
So startups trying to break into the market, it's interesting. I find that oftentimes what startups are really great at is they have an idea, obviously that they are passionate about, they're trying to take it and they're trying to grow it, build a business around it. What I often find that they don't do very well is they don't leverage their ecosystem. And what that means is when you make the assumption that you have to do everything as a startup and that it's only you or your small core team, even if you have built a board of directors, I find that they're reticent to lean into the people that are there to help them. And that comprises their ecosystem. What is critical, and I oftentimes have this conversation with my son. I'm like, what is critical to understand is that as a human, Maslow's hierarchy of needs say that lifelong learning is part of your need as a human. And what that means is you don't learn unless you actually engage other people. As a startup, you won't grow if you don't engage your ecosystem or identify who your ecosystem is. What is it? Who do you need in order to grow? What are the different components and who are part of what you need to build your product or service? And then how do you engage with them on a regular cadence so that you are, I would say, federating the amount of work that you have to do. It's very similar to when you look at AI. It does the same thing, right? Except you have a single source that you can leverage or multiple platforms. But what startups have to do is, one, part of their ecosystem is AI. I think of it as part of an extension of myself. Right? So how are you using AI in the different platforms? You heard of Perplexity. I have beautiful AI to build, beautiful PowerPoints. How are you integrating AI as part of your ecosystem so that you can federate your work in such a way that allows you to really focus on what you're really great at and then leverage the rest of your ecosystem and your board or your other people so that they can help you grow and scale faster?
Thank you. So really and truly, like the book Co-Intelligence says, we should be in a cyborg relationship with AI, where it is an extension of who we are, right? Okay, so I think we've all had some great takes on where we're headed, as well as explore some really useful and tactical opportunities that startups can take advantage of. I'd like to thank you both for your time and your brains this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank
you
all
very
of you.
much.
Thank you.